Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
The theme of this conference is trust, building an economy of trust. And many say the sanctions against power machines, which you own a stake in, was a bit unfair. Do you still trust doing business with the West?
First of all, yes, because there is no West or East. If you speak about the business, we are all parts of the global business community and business world. But of course, what has happened, which was completely unfair with power machines, of course, didn't help to build bridges and to do business in this global context.
How are you coping with these sanctions?
First of all, we should make sure that our financial flows are still there. We should preserve the currency flow. Plus, we are thinking about the market access. What is the biggest problem for us is access to the market. Not only we didn't sell anything to US yet, but our access to foreign markets and export was substantial part of power machines portfolio. Of course, now is under danger, and we have to make sure that we have to have access to the market.
Having gone through this, are you preparing for the implications of, say, if there's more sanctions and maybe some of the other companies you have stakes in?
Well, because it is not excluded by nature, and because the process of sanctions became very untransparent and very unpredictable, nobody could be safe and could be sure. Means we have to take some precautions. What kind of precautions could be taken, I don't know. But of course, we try to minimize suddenly exposure to dollars, for example, and so on. We have to think about restoration of level playing fields for machine building industry, for energy.
If you're exposing less to dollars, what other currencies are you looking at?
Alternative currency could be euro or some other local currencies. Do trade in Vietnam in dongs, do trade in India in rupees, and so on.
On that front, then, do the threat of global trade wars worry you?
Yes.
Especially as that impacts EM currencies all the time.
Yes, it worries me because it could undermine global trade and growth, which was a major driver of lifting people from the poverty. Poverty in China within 20 years moved from 60% to something like 15%. And it was a huge achievement. Poverty in Russia moved down substantially because of trade, because of global economy, because of global flow of trades and global flow of trades.
Out of all these, clouds of worry, geopolitical tensions, sanctions, trade wars, the volatility of things like the ruble and other currencies, what worries you the most when you wake up in the morning?
Now, well, I still wake up relatively quietly, thanks God. But what worries me at most, geopolitical risks. We see certain strange even dichotomy between economies who are doing relatively well. If you look at all local economies, big economies, small economies, we see everywhere economic growth, job creation, and everything looks suspended, moderate inflation. Everything looks good. And people are making money and companies are making money. But on the other hand, we see so many spots of tensions in geopolitics, Russia and West. Potential trade war between US and China, North Korean situation, Middle East, Syria, Iran, and many instances which might substantially impede economic growth and create a lot of problems for business.
More on the geopolitical front, what about Trump's steel tariffs against Russia? I know the U.S. accounts for a small majority for Severstal, say then like Rusal, but what impact have you seen from those steel tariffs?
So far, we don't feel any direct impact because our sales to U.S. last year represented only 3% of total output. We redirected it easily. It's not a problem for us at all. But what concerns us, potential impact on the global steel trade, because steel which didn't arrive to US will find other place in the world, and it could create substantial distortions. So far, we don't see any problems, but potentially, if it amplifies and if other countries will seek for retaliation or countermeasures, it could be big trade war, potentially affecting everybody.
Russia is preparing a response to sanctions and tariffs, and one of them is a possible measure that would mean Russia should implement criminal prosecution for anyone dealing with obliging by U.S. sanctions. So then, in a sense, businessmen would have to decide if they want to follow the U.S. sanction rules or the Russia sanction rules. What do you make of this? Because this could really impact business.
First of all, we do business globally and operate in different jurisdictions. We have much less exposure to U.S., but we were fifth largest steelmaker in the U.S. a couple of years ago. And we have to follow all local legislations and try to be, in balance. Speaking about potential criminal penalties, I personally, and I believe that whole business community is completely against it. It could move us too far. But of course, we should also avoid situation when these sanctions will meddle in the domestic sovereign economic regime. All in all, we have to find the way how to survive, but I would strongly oppose to move too far and go for criminal penalties. And it was actually a unanimous decision of Russian Union of Industrial Entrepreneurs Board, which I'm a member of. We publicly said that we are against criminal penalties and criminal duties.
You're also the biggest investor in TUI. The European company. Does it make sense for Russian business to invest in the U.S. and Europe at all during the current climate?
Why not? We are driven not by political decisions and political. Of course, we have to take it into account. Unfortunately, quite often more than we would like.
But you still trust the West?
I trust people. And I believe that we have much, much more in common. There is much more in common between you and me, between US and Russia, than divides us. And I believe that we will live. There is a very simple fact, which many people, or everybody knows very well, but quite a few people ignore in practical actions, I'm afraid, that 300 millions of Americans, 500 millions of Europeans, 40 millions of Ukrainians, 150 millions of Russians will live together on this planet, decades and hundreds, centuries ahead.
Right.
And I do believe that we should do business globally. And business is becoming by nature, everywhere, in all industries, more global, more transparent, and so on and so forth. And we are part of this story. And I believe that we should follow economic logic and invest everywhere, like all business people in the whole world should invest in Europe and Russia, being driven by economic logic and economic considerations. I do believe it is inevitable. No one, sanctions or geopolitical tension could stop it.